This is Afro Politico Africa edition. This week, we are all in Uganda, starting off from Uganda, removing the age limit so that you can be president for another 5 years.
Or
How
live.
sweet. I'm James Smart.
I'm Marvin Tumbo.
Welcome, everyone. This is two guys, two mics, two taskers at Jay's Bar, and this is Afro Politico Africa edition. Let's get started. And we're off in Uganda. Very, very quick. We spoke about this the last time. And the process of removing the age limit. Obviously, for President Yoweri Museveni's sake. He's approaching 75 and the constitution bars anyone past that age. And the progressives or the opposition, I should have called them on the other side, thought that after them removing the term limits, the age limit would be the next thing that could stop him. Clearly, that is not going to stop. And some are saying, quite rightly, that this is a slide to dictatorship. It's clear that President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni will or has all the interest of staying in power. So the questions of election then, which is now a two-pronged question. The question of why do people even have election in that country when you can have someone who can clearly change the law to suit him and fit him as and when it wants? What's even the point?
Democracy is an evolving animal. There's no set democratic a set democratic way. Every country, I think, has their own democracy's morphs in certain ways, and I think in Uganda, he's again you find political opportunists who will play the law. As I said earlier, rule of law, rule by law. That country has not had rule of law. It's been defined quite a bit in terms of rule by law, and as such, I think it's just it's a rubber stamp.
The question is, and for me, I think how I view it, there's this and pull by, opponents inside Uganda who are saying that, well, for Museveni having ruled for 30 plus years, and this continuation, we haven't seen any progress. And you have this situation whereby he keeps saying, if he hadn't come from the bush in the mid-80s, there would be no Uganda to rule, and there would be no Uganda to talk about. And the difference of marrying the two things of what he's been able to do with his younger years and being in office in the younger time to where he is right now, where it's obviously a consternation to the Republic, where now people are trying to justify. Like, he should be continuing having it because, we don't even have an opponent, there's no a clear, successor to take over from him. So yes, he should continue. And these justifications are created always and it's, for me, one of the characteristics of a country and an autocratic, I think a country that slides into autocratism.
Yeah.
And that is perfect Uganda for me.
To be honest, and again, when you have countries that have come from military coups,
Not judicial coups.
judicial.
No, go back to your original point. It's fine. I was just trying to throw you off.
Eh? Oh, wonderful!
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
It's awesome.
Marvin, go on your point. I will listen to you.
So judicial coups happen, quote unquote, happen in a country where you have rule of law. If it was ruled by law, where the leaders are not subservient to the laws, what you'll have is the Supreme Court saying exactly what the president of the land says. Yeah, dictates what should happen, and you've seen that happen in other jurisdictions. I think this era of leaders is coming to an end.
How?
Uh,
Where do you see that? Give me the
through
evidence for that.
through attrition.
They are dying. Just say it. It's
Through-
okay. This is Afro Politico. You can say it. All these guys are
It's
headed
through
to the graves.
attrition.
Right.
Yeah, it's through attrition. And I think also you'll have younger leaders take over the next few decades. And but for countries that already have these kinds of leaders and leadership, it will be very difficult to change without changing the people.
This Uganda problem, it's closer to Kenya than it's very far from Kenya.
Yeah.
Right? They obviously have a history of, military coups. They have history of violence and, leader challenging another leader and, kicking them out and that sort of thing. And that seems to me to have sort of defined the soul of Uganda in terms of how they approach politics and social issues. That it seems to me that the biggest population of Uganda it sort of doesn't want to go back to what happened before 1986, or is reminded all the time of what happened in 1986, and they view anyone who offers some sort of stability, some sort of a semblance of political organization to be sort of a savior. And how do you, I think, sort of span this out of conscience of a country? Because this, to contrast it with Kenya, I think the 2007 situation in Kenya continues to define us today. We are in this situation today because of 2007.
Yep.
And I think for many years it will continue defining our many elections, our many political alignments, and that sort of thing. And maybe, thankfully, what we've done is our constitution and our laws, that it sort of remedies some of this extra mourning, if you like, of a situation.
Kissinger, Henry, he argues that when it comes to when you start talking about history, yeah, you should consider the history of what has happened, and then also you must consider the history of what didn't happen. Yeah. If you say we are here today because of 2007, or Uganda is there because of the coups that happened, yeah. I think a more balanced and where you'd appreciate where you are as a country is to think, hey, what if we didn't have coups in Uganda? What kind of an alternative country would they have? Would they be Kenya, for instance? Yeah. So that when you consider the history of actually what happened, also we appreciate that this is what could have happened. And I think if we start imagining that level, we can start painting a picture of where, as a country, ideally should be moving to.
Great. And now let's continue studying the continent. Talk about African leadership, but far away from the continent in New York. And this is at the UN General Assembly.
Mm-hmm.
Our leader for so many years, finally stood up and spoke straight, talking down to Trump, in many respects talking down, telling him how, Africa has seen this before. We've seen this, kind of leadership who, speak tough and they do nothing and they come from crazy places and whatever it is. And his speech has been quite held in the continent. People think that he actually spoke well. I'm speaking about Comrade Robert Mugabe. Thing is this. His body might be giving way, but his mind is sharp. I agree with that assessment.
Mm-hmm.
But he's having an election, but it's coming up. What do you feel?
I think he'll win. I think that's all I can say about Comrade.
Of course he'll win. Of course. Who would defeat Comrade?
But here's the thing, I think more with another African leader, not African leader, but anyway, Mugabe has has a political system. There's no other party other than ZANU PF.
Right.
Yeah. Changirai, I haven't seen him in.
I think he has health challenges, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
That he was a bit unwell, but recent reports say that he's getting better and feeling
Yeah.
well. But I agree with you. He doesn't have the same, I think, political potency that he had maybe 10
He
years
doesn't.
ago.
Yeah, he
Right.
doesn't, and that's a done deal. It's gone.
Yeah.
And for me, I think it's Mugabe's to lose. Yeah, he has no opposition, and I don't think even the system as is, there can be an opposition per se.
I was going to speak about this the question of him being this presence in Zimbabwe politics for decades and decades and decades, and then running an election that clearly is going to win. Contrasted to Uganda, pretty much this is where Museveni is going. All right, where you have absolutely tire and obliterate the opposition, that they're unable to even mount a challenge because you've managed to make the laws, you become the law, and the law become you in many respects.
Do you know? And this is funny because I could say the book I'm reading, Kissinger. Yeah, he was talking about. Let's talk even with regard to how Trump relates to other leaders. This is post World War II. Yeah. And Kissinger was arguing in his doctoral thesis, A World Restored. He was arguing that at the end of the day, if you are fighting Germany, yeah, you should be careful to make sure that they've lost, but only to the extent that they don't develop this kind of revolutionary attitude, yeah, to fight back. Because so it has to be such a fine balance. Yeah, it has to be such a fine balance where you say, okay, we've beat you.
Yeah.
You are down, but we don't come and try and crush you so that you create a resentment that leads to a revolution.
Right.
And that's that's what created the space for someone like Hitler to come up. Yeah. So the same thing I think will happen in these particular countries where you crush, where you find you've crushed an opposition to a certain extent, a certain resentment will start building, and once it's reached a certain groundswell,
Yeah.
you have a problem. Yeah. You
Because
have
a popular, you're starting something that a popular
exactly.
will. That
yeah.
I was going to contrast this with what, again, to Trump, while in US, and he made this standoffish comments when he was talking to African leaders and said, most of my friends, if I quote him, most of my friends are coming to your countries to get rich, so I can congratulate you. Right? And he's talked about of a country called Nambia, and it took over. I mean, on the Twitter, like, there was people tried to look for that country called Nambia and they couldn't find it. And so you have contrast an American president who's in office from one who left, who knew the ins and outs of this continent, who was very comfortable speaking to this continent. In his last tour, he came to this continent and was at the AU. And he spoke directly to the political leadership of this continent.
And to our young people.
Yes, and to young people about the things, and he could connect. And I feel that if there's an American president who speak to this continent, was Barack Obama. If you look at the policies of George W. Bush, it tells that Bush understood the issues of African continent. All right?
Bush was a better president for Africa than
Yes,
Obama.
His policies were much more attuned to
Yeah.
the issues of the continent then. Bill Clinton, in many respects, I think
a black man.
was was a black man who said many things but didn't deliver a lot of things. And I think part of Rwanda is a creation of him. That his refusal to get involved when the Rwanda genocide was, just happening and starting, and the whole UN and the Americans
The
not
French.
getting involved. Yes, their refusal to get involved, their reaction right now is to that they feel that they have something they owe the people of Rwanda and the people of the continent in that respect. But Trump, and I'm not sure anyone has figured out what Trump wants to do, because if you look at the State Department, he's not even hired a quarter of the staff that are needed. The African department or the African secretary does not even exist. And this is a powerful position. This is an entire American policy towards the continent. It appears to be no policy is a good policy.
The US Senate was created especially to protect the people against a popular leader or a government.
Right.
Yeah. Now, how the U.S. Senate is structured is that each term overruns the term of the president.
Yeah.
So they have a 6-year term.
Yeah.
A president only has 4 years.
Yes. Yeah.
Which means the president cannot be able to threaten a
Cannot
senator
influence the election
and
as
cannot
well.
influence the elections of senators.
Yeah.
At any one point, a third of the Senate will be going for elections, which means you have a certain continuity. Now, these have been put into the system so that the Senate can be able to say, you know what, you can't pull this off.
Right.
They cannot agree for you to go to war and whatnot. And that's why I'm hopeful that even with this kind of political environment that they have at the moment, where there's no bipartisanship and whatnot, even this environment, the institutions should be able to stand up to that kind of a president, especially when he starts entertaining nuclear thoughts.
I think that, and you're right, the American Constitution or the American institutions, they are set up to check each other. In many respects, not allow one institution to override the interests of the other.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a counter check that is almost in equal measure. Mm-hmm. Now, in that respect, I feel that you have this difficulty where people are talking about impeaching Trump. I don't think they'll be able to impeach them. I don't think the American...
It's not in their interest, actually, to impeach.
Yeah. I think it's going to drain out a lot of political energy, and it involves people in a process that clearly cannot... I mean, they can put him in a corner and force him to resign, right? But they cannot force him, or they cannot impeach him.
Mm.
And I think that obsession in many ways works for Trump, because it puts us against them, this dichotomy, political dichotomy that works very well with him, because Trump's politics is very simplistic in many ways. As long as he can prove that he has many enemies, it works for him. So if you have an entire Senate, you have an entire House of Representatives, and the Democrats and some Republicans who are in the middle, who are always, or in the middle ground, who are trying to push him over many, many things, without constantly going back to the point of want to impeach him, then Trump gets his power from it. That's why he can manage to switch. I mean, now he's talking about Kim Jong-un. 3-4 days ago, he was talking about the healthcare bill, right? 3-4 days before that, he was talking about Russia and whatever. So he's playing them for the simple fact that his politics is very simplistic. It's based on a dichotomy of us against them. And that works very well for them. Now, I think the American system, or their politics, I'd like to think that it's a bit much more diverse than that. That they want to talk about, they can talk about the issues that depress them the most, but in context of many other issues as well. That's why they needed sophisticated presidency or whatever it is. That was my view. And I think Trump is just a misnomer in that.
No, it is a misnomer, a proper one. I think when you hear the more experienced Democrats, the one thing they've said is that they're not going to entertain any talk of impeachment, and they're not going even to try and initiate. Do you know why? Yeah, for someone like Trump, the reason you let him stay in office is so that these 4 years will be so bad, yeah, that the country will not entertain either the Republican Party. So they are using him
for a campaign.
It's better for Democrats if he serves the 4 years as an example of what not to do. Yeah? So you keep him there for the 4 years, you record all the shit he does, yeah? And then now use that. Yeah? Use that against him and say, look, now that we are going to this election, this is a person this is a guy you elected.
This is your person.
And this is how much he has killed the values and the ideals of our country over the last 4 years. So he is the walking billboard for a democratic campaign come 2020.
Let's move on to the next point, and that's Brexit, as we move both here. So the British went to do this vote 2 years ago. They voted to leave the European Union. For obvious reasons, it takes a process to divorce. I mean, it happens. I've never divorced, but it does up here. So this process is going to take maybe up to 2020 or 2022. And now, all of a sudden, they realize they have a huge divorce bill to pay, running into billions of pounds. And they don't know...
Divorce is costly, man.
Yeah, who's going to do this? Who's paying for all this?
Yeah.
But they caught themselves in a catch-22 because the European nations, in their view, they're saying that no one is going to pay more or less while you're talking about these divorce proceedings. You leaving and you're not coming. If Britain is going to figure out how it lives and the terms that it lives, in that period, it has to be the same system. You have to pay the same money until we are clear. We're all clear. Now, an election that was supposed to be, something that, defines Cameroon as a politician who's arrived, who's moved the country into something, sort of like a political self-actualization, which completely backfired. Right?
The the Tories have never. When you go back even to Thatcher years, yeah, the UK from the early 80s when they were entering the commission. I think they did the referendum. I think 75 to enter the EU. Then the commission.
Right.
Now, early 80s they entered, but Shingo Upande. Yeah, it was a bit funny because like, hey, let's just enter and whatnot. They've never been the foot. This thing was established.
They were never for it.
They were never for it.
Yeah.
This thing was established. The biggest members, you have Italy, you have France, you have Germany. Those are the owners. They are the anchors of the commission.
And yes.
Yeah. Now, for these guys, and if you look when you go back to the British history, there's always been talk around leaving the EU. Yeah. But politicians have been smart enough
To avoid it.
Yeah, they've been smart enough.
Cameron was in a period of political arrogance. He had just come from an election.
Precisely.
Yeah, where he had won supposedly and increased his majority, the most slickest, politician in the UK. Labour did not have a candidate. Labour looked all tatters and whatnot. So he introduced this topic with the confidence that he almost commands the politics of the United Kingdom at that particular point.
No, he should never have introduced Brexit as a referendum issue in the first place, because he promised it in his campaign that he's going to call a referendum should he win. He won, he called the referendum, he resigned.
It's a terrible idea.
It was awful. And as you said, it was arrogance, but also it's those things where you try and you use these popular or populist talks or promises or pledges to get ahead, but this time it cost him, and now it's going to cost the country. Because look at it, yeah. At the moment, and this one goes. Look at the universities, for instance. You have even British professors who are refusing to work in British universities because the EU is denying them funding.
Yeah.
So now they feel it's better to go and work within the EU so they can get funding for research and for operations and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just one of many things. Now you have this thing extending to how many laws? They have tens of thousands of laws that they have to domesticate from the EU. Yeah. They have all these agreements that they have to negotiate afresh. Yeah, it's a mess.
It's a craze.
Unholy mess.
Right. Let's finally talk about the true leader of the free world, Angela Merkel, going into an election. She looks comfortable. You must agree that her politics has been, sort of, in many respects, quite smart. I mean, she's at home, she's strong.
Yeah.
When the issue of migrants came about, immigrants from Syria, she was quite dead on. She was like, we will take something that was going against the popular grain, because if you remember then,
yes,
the entire European leadership was walking around eggshells around these issues. So these issues of us against them, you cannot bring, immigrants or whatever. But she took them on, and the elections of their parliamentary parties were coming on at that time, I think about a year ago, and all political pundits were of the opinion that her party was going to lose. But that did not happen. But now election is coming up. She's been there for a while.
SDP is not going to lose.
Yes. What do you think about this Angela Merkel and where her politics leads her? Oh, because she looks like she's at the center of very good politics.
She's grown, and her experience and her age in politics, not age, is showing. Yeah, and what you have now is Germany in few short years,
Right.
considering where they were. Yeah. Right now they are emerging and they are taking center stage, and I think as a people, given that they can do this, they are now showing direction to the rest of the continent and the world in itself. You have that kind of pride, and I think it's being rewarded at home.
When does it end for her?
I think she'll do one more term to make it 5 terms.
5 in a row.
5 in a row.
That's good.